and boom goes the dynamite.
It's Friday! Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to our final edition of Daily Dive for the week. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Joining me, producer Mike. We've had a chance to talk to this week, recapping, bringing in some fantastic guests, previewing this upcoming weekend. Well, it's time that we break down our picks for the weekend. Plenty of games on tap, and our top story today presented by the Daily Dive store, where you can check out merchandise in our social media bios. The link is there to see all the Daily Dive merch that we've got, beanies, hats, hoodies, you name it, it's there. So, getting into our top story, producer Mike, let's start off with the Georgia Swarm taking on the Toronto Rock. As we talked about this week, and as many have noticed, Georgia's still with that goose egg in the win column, still searching for their first win of the season. And as Brian Shanahan, our great guest from yesterday, awesome person, was talking about, he doesn't think the Swarm will trade Lyle Thompson. He doesn't see much changing there. But one thing that needs to change is a win. So in this game, who do you think is winning, especially looking at the odds? Who do you got?
Toronto Rock. I don't see any other way. It's really sad, Renee, because I heard what he was saying. Basically, on yesterday's show, NLL analyst Brian Shanahan told me that there's too much money. Well, there's not enough money should be involved with things happening right now in the NLL. And guys tend to stay in one spot unless something crazy happens. And plus, he might be the face of the league right now. Whether or not he's playing up to that, I will leave that alone for now. But why would they trade him? I mean, if they're getting the numbers that they say they are in attendance, why would they trade him? Like, for who? You basically lose half the arena, I feel like. And I understood his point. It's sad, but the Rock are too good. I'm going to go with the cover. I'm sorry. I think they cover 2.5. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Toronto Rock on this. Like I mentioned earlier this week, ever since we had Nick Rose on our show and he got a taste of the Daily Dive Good Luck Charm, that is our show. I feel like the Rock are moving in a direction. And for anybody that's missed it, it's been great. The players, the coaches, people that have come on our show go off to do amazing things. They don't win the lottery, but they win the lottery of life. They start winning more games. They start overall producing better. Coincidence? We don't know. But for now, yes, it's the Daily Dive Good Luck Charm. And so I feel like Toronto, absolutely a top team in the league. And these are the types of games you have to go on and win. Take care of business. They're the trouble games because you have a Georgia Swarm team with no expectation on them whatsoever that has their backs against the wall versus Toronto, who's looking to keep moving and climbing the ladder. But to your point about the trade, many of us followed the NBA trade news that was going on Thursday, Wednesday night, the craziness. And the difference in a league like the NBA is there are large contracts and a lot of money being dished out to encourage players to join different teams. Some players would rather chase a contract more than a championship, but they have that option a lot more. Whereas you see in the NLL, unfortunately, it's like quality of life. Do I want to uproot my family, my kids, my spouse, change my whole life where I've been for years to go get the same amount of money?
The expectations with money.
Yeah. So at least in a league like the NBA, a lot of guys, and I was just talking about this around James Harden with the Sixers, because I don't know what his future is going to be in Philly. There's a number of players that you see often, Kyrie with that move, possibly even in Dallas. You see a lot of players that sometimes might step away from or they have options. Do I go chase a championship? Do I go chase the bag? In the NLL, it's like, am I chasing either?
Right, it's sad.
Thompson, where are you going to go unless you go to Buffalo or Toronto? I don't think that these teams can even afford him. Where are you going to go to actually be able to win a championship? So why move if the money's not going to change? It leads to a much bigger conversation. I don't know if everybody's with us on this one, but I think that it makes complete sense.
True.
Controversial, but hey, money talks. And if you can't get a championship, you at least want to stack your bread, make some money. And looking at two other teams that are chasing a little bit more in terms of championships. The Saskatchewan Rush taking on Calgary. The Roughnecks and the Rush, two teams that right now in the West are competing for like that number 2 spot behind San Diego and possibly Colorado, depending on where you want to put them. But look, I personally am going to go first and say I've got Calgary winning this one. I think this is a big game for them to show we are that next team. We are moving up. And, earlier on in the season, having wins over Vancouver and this, that, and the third, you might be able to make excuses about their record. But I think this is a chance they get to 500. They knock off Saskatchewan and they solidify themselves as a top team in the West.
Agreed. I think the Roughnecks win. And the reason I think so is because I don't see enough from the Rush right now. I know both teams are going to get up for this game, but the Rush, to me, the last 2 weeks, you mean tell me for 2 weeks they've been overlooking teams just to get to Calgary? I can't believe that. I'm sorry. I think America's darling Alex Bouquet, and Canada's darling too, to be fair. The lacrosse's darling goalie right now is Alex Bouquet, and I just don't see him doing enough. Calgary's defense is nasty. And they can also run if they need to. I think Roughnecks are a very underrated team. We'll probably talk about them more when they do win at least one of these games. We'll have to see.
Yeah, Christian Nobianco has been doing a fantastic job in net for Calgary. The Roughnecks are a team, and as Cody Jansen was talking about, Saskatchewan Rush play-by-play broadcaster earlier this week, this is a rivalry. This is an emotional game. It's going to be a physical game. But I think that, like you said, Calgary to me has more fight in them. They're playing with a little bit more edge. Saskatchewan seems a little bit flat and complacent at times. So I think Calgary comes away with this one. Well, producer Mike, you and I have agreed on the first 2 games of the weekend, which rarely happens. But we've got more games to get into coming up in our next segment. So after this quick break, we've got more game predictions for this weekend coming your way. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington, joined by producer Mike. Now that we've had an opportunity to talk about our predictions for the Toronto Rock Georgia Swarm game, as well as the Calgary Saskatchewan game, it's time to get into some more game predictions. This segment presented by B-Res Coffee Company. For the Monday to Friday grind, be sure to check out B-Res Coffee Company, where you can also sample some fantastic new flavors they have for that extra boost of energy to get you through the day. So use the link in our bio as well as the promo code Daily Dive to check that out. Well, let's check out some more games. The Halifax Thunderbirds taking on the Rochester Nighthawks. Rochester, after starting the season undefeated at 6-0, have dropped their last 2 games coming up against the Halifax team that's coming off of an overtime game that's been in the mix and sitting at 500. Mike, Rochester trending possibly in a really bad direction right now. Is this the game that you think they get back on track and get back in the win column? Oh,
yes, I do. I think it's also very disrespectful that Halifax is a road favorite here. I'd like to know why. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe last week they lost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they lost last week. I'm like, Nighthawks lost to a very good Bandits team. I know it was without Josh Byrne, but they might have been game planning for Josh Byrne. Not an excuse, but just saying. I think it's always up to Rylan Hartley, and I think he's going to be splitting heads and splitting legs, and I'm going to go with the Nighthawks to win this game on Saturday. Money line.
I'm kind of torn on this one. I legitimately could see this game going either way. So let me just preface my pick by saying if I'm wrong, I'm still right because I could actually see either team winning this game. To be different, I'm actually going to pick Halifax. Simply because it's anybody's game. I think that for Rochester, after dropping their last 2 losses, there's 2 ways they can respond back and get back on the right track and rally the troops, or it can snowball. And I do think there's some extra confidence from opponents, such as a Halifax, coming into this game that might say, you know what, we can take a piece of them too. We're going to knock off Rochester too. Because as we have talked about, with Rylan Hartley being the guy for them in net, they're still winning. They've been winning by committee, and that may have caught up to them a little bit. But I do think that if they lose this game, it's going to be the 3-game losing streak that helps them in the long run. Similar to a losing streak that helped my Eagles after dropping back-to-back losses at the end of the regular season to help them as they went into the postseason. So sometimes I think losses are needed. They're lessons. They help you learn a lot more, and they might help the Nighthawks find out that they need to have the guy. So maybe Halifax, like losing to Buffalo is, like you said, it's explainable. You can make excuses. Can you make excuses if you now drop 3 straight and your 3rd loss is to Halifax? No. So this might be the wake-up call they need, that there's some changes that need to be made, and I think Halifax wins this game. All right. Next game. This one, another one that could absolutely go either way. Woo-wee. We've got the Albany Firewolves taking on the New York Riptide. 2 teams at the bottom of the standing, struggling to win, needing to win, and this being a winnable game. Mike, thoughts?
Ooh, oh man, it's my favorite game always. It's the Riptide, baby. Oh, I'm going to go with the Riptide. I think Jeff T gets it done. I know Firewolves just seem to haven't played in forever at this point. I think that does matter with guys who work all week, so I'm going to go with the Riptide. I think this game shoots over 23.5 easily.
So you're going with Jeff T and the Riptide, okay? I know it's surprise.
Right. 10-piece.
Okay. I'd like a 10-piece with some sweet and sour right now. Sweet and sour sauce.
Right.
That's about the only 10-piece that may happen. But look, I could see this game also going either way. And I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think Albany or New York can definitely win. But I'm going to go with Albany. I'm just leaning that way. I'm just feeling an Albany victory. I'm going to go Albany. Why not? I need to catch you in picks anyways. And if these are some games I could steal from you, I'm going to steal it. Absolutely. Now, before we welcome in our guest for the episode, we've got one more game to get into, and this one's going to be another big one. We've got the Warriors taking on Panther City. We've got 2 more games to get into, actually. Silly me. Warriors, Panther City. Now, for this game, another game of 2 teams struggling. 2 teams at the bottom of the standings, 2 teams needing wins, similar to the Albany New York game. Who do you have winning this one? I'm going to let you go first again.
Wow. Give me the Panther City Kitty Cats. The what do we call them?
Meow.
Oh, I forgot what we called them. Like, we nicknamed them something else.
Oh, the Pests.
The Pests. That's right. The Pests of the Dallas Pests get the win here and get to 5-4, which I believe will be their first winning record in franchise history. It feels like I think that's an easy one to think about. So I'm gonna go with the Panther City. I'm gonna go under 24.5.
Okay.
So.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you on this one, actually. I'm going to go Panther City. I've been impressed by how they've played, especially you look at last week's game. You know, they've been hanging with a lot of top teams in the league. And I think of all the teams that are in that struggle bus right now that are at 1 and 2 wins or 0 wins. I think Panther City's like, no, this is my stop. This is where I get off. You know, I'm done here. I'm off the struggle bus. I think they get this much needed win over Vancouver, and I think they start to climb into the next grouping of teams with like the Philadelphia Wings, and that's the main team that's in that grouping. But either way, Panther City is winning against Vancouver. All right, Mike, we've got the Mammoth and the Roughnecks, and the Roughnecks, if anybody's paying attention, this is their weekend to play back-to-back games. That's right. They're playing a very tough game against Saskatchewan and then turning around and playing another very tough game against Colorado.
But
I'm is going to be a tough one. I'm going to go with the Roughnecks to sweep the weekend.
That'd be the second straight team to do so.
Yeah.
And the last one we didn't see coming. You know what's funny? My neck just feels really rough.
Oh, no.
It's just like, there's something in it. It's like Calgary, it's like a lacrosse. Yeah, they're sweeping the weekend again, baby. I'm surprised you went with that. I'm impressed. Well, I'm like barely leading the standings. It's not like it's anything special.
Yeah,
I'm picking games
talking junk because you're impressed by my pick. Like you're the pick expert.
You're looking fantastic. You're
Look
learning.
at you.
We'll go
Nicely
with the Roughnecks.
done.
But honestly, I don't think the Mammoth have enough offense. I think Roughnecks are going to show this week they have more offense than other defensive teams. So,
and I just think, like I was saying about the last game with Panther City, now moving into that next grouping of the middle teams. There's like top, middle, bottom. The Wings, the Mammoth I will put there. The Roughnecks, the Rush I'll put there in that middle grouping. But I think this is the time for the Roughnecks to come out of that group. It's not a struggle bus. It's more like the walking group. Like
a struggle taxi?
Yeah, like if we're comparing it back to school days, you have the kids that are on the bus, you have the kids that walk to school, and you have the kids whose parents drive them. I'm gonna put these as the walkers. Like they don't need to wait for the bus, but they're still walking to school. They're in the rain, they're in the sunshine, they're in the weather, the different inclement weather, and that's the Roughnecks. But it's their time to get out of that. Mom and Dad's gonna start driving them to school. They're gonna start being the cool kids. They're going to be the cool kids that get dropped off at school now. That's my analogy. But look, either way, what I like most about Calgary is I think they have extra fight in them. They just, to me, have that extra energy, intensity, confidence that regardless what their record may show, they're going to step on the field and battle and make it an ugly game if they need to and grind out wins. And I think the Mammoth and Saskatchewan are missing that extra oomph. And I think the Roughnecks are going to have extra pride, especially with this being two big games to climb the West and climb overall standings.
These games are both in Calgary, I believe. So this is like very interesting. It's like a home and home. Like usually on doubleheader, they have to like travel somewhere else across God's, river or whatever.
Correct.
But hey, you made a lot of Big Red's Coffee Company references. That was nice. A lot of energy, a lot of oomph, a lot of grind. I mean, come on now. You're killing it. Company girl. Good.
Listen, we all remember being back in elementary school, and I used to think it was so cool that some kids got dropped off. I was actually on the bus. But either way, look, Calgary's done with that middle group. They're climbing the ladder this weekend. It's happening. 2 home games. We've got them having 2 home victories. But we're not the only experts with picks. We've got Brian Andrews joining the show, NLL betting expert. After this break, our big guest presented by Fanatics, Brian Andrews, will be joining us to weigh in on his thoughts this upcoming weekend. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington. Producer Mike and I had a chance to give our picks. Well, now it's time to bring in the expert, the betting expert himself, Brian Andrews, in this segment presented by Fanatics, where you can check out some awesome NLL merchandise. That link also in our social media bio, where you can check it out today. Brian, welcome back to Daily Dive. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's really nice to be back on the show.
Absolutely. Now, we took time to give our picks and wanted to get yours as well. Starting with the Rock Swarm game tonight, that game 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Toronto Rock, they are the favorites in this game. What are your thoughts on this game coming into it? Is this a chance for the Georgia Swarm to finally get that first win that they've been seeking?
Yeah, I don't think this is that weak. It's hard to find a bad thing to say about the Rock right now. Their offense is firing on all cylinders. They even have defensive players getting into the scoring action in transition. Their defense has the best goals against average in the league right now. Nick Rose is even at the top of the standings of some of the advanced goalie stats, which are compiled by Ty Merrow. You can check him out on Twitter. And the Swarm, on the other hand, don't have the production to really, I think, even keep pace with their offense, but particularly not keep pace with the Rock's offense, given the Rock's defense. So I feel like the Rock -2.5 is the play of the week, really. And we might all be giving it, the kiss of death because everyone might be against the Swarm, who are winless right now. But they have to show us something to earn us not picking Rock -2.5 in this game.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's a tough team in the Swarm, being that there's no expectations on them. So it could be the kiss of death, but I agree. I don't think it's this weekend. I think that we're going to have to wait before we see a Georgia Storm victory. Don't know when it's going to happen, but I don't think it's happening yet. Now, in our Daily Dive game of the week, Saskatchewan is taking on Calgary, a nice Western rivalry, Battle of the Prairies. And this game tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time, the first of the weekend for the Roughnecks, and one that's going to have a lot of contention on Western Conference standings and overall NLL standings. Now, the Roughnecks are the favorites. But what are your thoughts on who wins this one?
I totally agree that this should be the game of the week. So I also apply that title to this game. And I was listening earlier, and I agree a lot of what you guys were saying about the Rush. The Warriors, who have lost Logan Schuss and Mitch Jones to injury and trade, respectively, still kind of gave the Rush a scare. If you look at the end score, it looks like the Rush handled the game, but it was actually really close until pretty late in the fourth, where the Rush kind of ran away with it. So I agree that they're kind of feeling flat. They've had two easier matchups on paper the past couple of weeks, and now they're going up against a Roughnecks team that has had a really good last 3 weeks, playing like the top 3 teams in the NLL, the Seals, Thunderbirds, and Bandits, winning 2 and losing one of them by 1. So the Roughnecks stock is really rising in the league. So I like this spot for the Roughnecks. Personally, I'm not playing anything on this game, and I can explain why if we want to talk about the Mammoth Roughnecks a little bit later. But if you really like the Roughnecks right now, taking them at plus money on the money line could be a high value play. Personally, I'm not a Rush doubter yet, but I do think the Roughnecks are on a hot streak right now. So I like them on the money line, but I'm not playing it personally.
Yeah, I think that the key thing here for this game is it's not an upset for whoever loses. These are two good teams, and I think for me, exactly as you mentioned, looking at the past couple weeks and just the way each team is progressing and how they've been winning and how they've been losing, the Roughnecks have that slight edge. I think they just have extra in the tank. They're a little bit more fired up. They play with more passion than the Rush, and they just play more consistently with that passion. We see it from Saskatchewan, but I don't think we see it enough start to finish. So I definitely, yeah, go ahead.
I agree. We haven't seen a performance like their week 1 crushing of the Mammoth.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like after that first week, everyone was like, oh no, here comes the Rush. And since then, it's still been like very consistent performance, but not as dominant as they've needed to be, I think, to gain that little bit of extra respect. And I think that's why a lot of people like the Roughnecks in this position right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, another one that's tough, 2 teams that are looking to climb the standings. We're not going to go through every game, but I want to give you just a few to give your thoughts on. The Vancouver Warriors taking on Panther City. 2 teams needing a win, but Panther City, a team, as we talk about past performances, in my opinion, has been hanging with the top dogs much more, playing better lacrosse, which is why I have them winning this game Saturday night at 8 p.m. What are your thoughts on who wins this one?
I mean, I've had a staunch position on our Bet on Lacrosse show that I'm going to fade the Warriors until they really prove me wrong. And having a win against like Las Vegas so far has not really proven me wrong. So I'm really going to fade the Warriors until they start showing me they can win against quality teams. And the more pieces they trade away or lose to injury, sadly, the less faith I'm going to have in them. So I do like Panther City to win this game, although that's not what I'm going to play in this game. I agree with Mike. I'm going to take the under 24.5. There's a lot of reasons for this. The Warriors are losing Mitch Jones to Philly, Logan Schuss to injury, like I've been saying. But Panther City is also losing some production. They got Callum Crawford, but he is now on the short-term holdout list. And he, as of today, as of recording right now, he still has not been placed back on the active roster. So Panther City's losing some production from that standpoint. And their back end's still been really good. They've been holding good teams like the Rush and that caliber of team to like 11, 12 goals. And 24 is really high. I think this line is inflated because the last time these teams met 2 weeks ago, Panther City hung 20 on the Warriors. I think the Warriors have shown last week against the Rush that they have a little bit of fight left in them, and I don't think they're going to let this game get away from them. So I think 24.5 is really high for this game, and I think we're going to see a lower scoring game this time around.
Yeah, since beating the Desert Dogs, the Warriors have been at least playing much better, hanging with teams more competitive lacrosse, and just overall a better product on the floor. But I still don't think it's enough to beat Panther City, but I think to your point, it's not going to be a high-scoring game. Probably going to be a defensive chess match more than anything, versus two teams that are like all high-powered offenses meeting up, like we saw Panther City's production last time they played. Well, our final one that I want to get your thoughts on, we touched on this before, the Colorado Mammoth taking on the Calgary Roughnecks. As we talked about, the Roughnecks, they do have 2 games this weekend, playing back-to-back, both games at home. This one's Saturday night at 9 p.m. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is the most interesting game, and Hutton Jackson in particular, also at Bet on Lacrosse, Pro Lacrosse Talk, and the Action Network, has been keeping track of a very important trend, and this is part of why the title at the bottom said that there are no lines for this game currently.
Yeah.
It's because teams that have played 2 games in a weekend on a Friday and Saturday, so 1 day of rest, and usually travel, like Mike said earlier, those teams are like 5-13 straight up and 4-14 against the spread. So it's really hard to play 2 games in a weekend, and that's not only includes like teams who win the first game. So we have to wait to get lines until after the Roughnecks' first game completes. That's how DraftKings has been putting out the lines. So that's why you don't see the lines currently, because previously we've been able to take advantage of them posting the lines early. And if the team that's playing 2 days in a row is the underdog both times, you can play reliably the second game. You can play the underdog and win a very high percentage, like 75% of the time. So I think the books are starting to pay attention to that pattern of teams losing and us betting against them or betting for the underdog to win. So for that reason, I really like the Roughnecks in this spot. And instead of playing the Roughnecks in their first game, I'm going to see if the Mammoth are the underdog against the Roughnecks in the second game and probably play them against the spread. You'll probably only get +1.5, but it's worth it considering the trend of teams being 4-14 against the spread, as especially in a favored position when you have to lay points. The Mammoth have a very high probability of covering that spread and winning that game. So I really like the Mammoth in that spot just because of the short turnaround for Calgary, even though they're not traveling. It's just how banged up you get playing in these NLL games. The Roughnecks really need to persevere to put together 2 games in a row.
Yeah, we saw the Bandits do it last week, but these are 2 different types of games that you're playing. It's not an easy game versus the Rush Friday night. And even though, as you mentioned, they are at home, it's a 24-hour, 25-hour turnaround from face-off of one game to the next. Not a lot of time to rest. And that is tough. That is tough. Teams aren't used to doing that as much, which is why, as you mentioned, you do often see teams split the weekend. Now, thank you for sharing your thoughts. You just gave a lot. This is why you are the NLL betting expert. Just breaking it down for us in a way that's so poetic and so easy to follow, as you're giving your thoughts on 4 of the games this upcoming weekend. So we'll see how that pans out. We appreciate you, as always, for taking time to join us here on Daily Dive.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Brian Andrews, everybody, the NLL betting expert. That's our big guest of the show, presented by Fanatics. Brian's given his thoughts and definitely shared a lot of insight on the betting side. We also had Mike and I share our picks. Well, it's time to give your picks. Be sure to drop them in the comments and share who you think is winning this upcoming weekend. As always, be sure to give us a follow at Daily Dive Lax to keep up with all we've got going on. And although I would love to sweep the weekend, and I'm hoping that I do in the NLL, there's one game that's most important for me to get right. Sunday! Fly, Eagles, fly. You'll see me back here on Monday, either crying tears of joy, crying tears of sadness, maybe not here at all because I'm still running the streets of Philly celebrating. But either way, go Eagles. Good luck to us in our picks this weekend, and we'll see what happens. See you guys back here on Monday after a victorious Super Bowl. weekend for the Eagles and victorious picks for me. Have a great weekend.